Y'all ready? Welcome in to the fifth dimension. Living Balanced, a conversation with Mike Pyle. And we are on the air. I want to welcome everybody in to the Fifth Dimension podcast, a show focused on bettering the human condition and mindfulness. So today I have a very good friend of mine on the show, Mike Pyle, calling all the way in from the greater Boston area. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you. So, is this your like first show?
This is the first interview show that I have recorded. So I did already record a couple other of episodes,
Oh, okay.
but in terms of when this show is getting released, I'm releasing the first 5 to 6 shows all on the same date to kind of give some like content to everybody. So, you can
So, are those
choose your
topics
episodes.
secret? We'll find out at a later time.
No, I
Can you give
mean,
us any like
I,
sneak peeks about what you've done with the podcast
I
so
mean,
far? Or?
so some of the show is talked about, the power of authentic choice and how we
Okay.
can create a positive mindset in our lives. Some of the other episodes, I talk about my specific um, routine and spiritual practice that I take part in, whether it's meditation, yoga. And then I have a couple other interviews lined up. And in terms of the interviews, those have not actually been recorded yet. There is uh, dates for those, but I'm not 100% sure
Okay.
which two of the interviews that I'm thinking of I will release with that first batch of 5 to 6 episodes. Yours is going to be in there, and one of the other two will. I just haven't decided which one yet. So
Well,
got
well,
some
I'm
good stuff.
honored to be one of your guests. So,
Well, first, I figure first recording, we kind of have to, right? Figure why not.
okay.
So, why don't you tell everybody, like, give a little background about what brings you onto the podcast?
I guess it was discussions with you about just random topics while we work together at a local gym, or about life, or random things. And I know you mentioned you want to do this podcast, and we had talked about, like, again, a whole myriad of topics. Mindfulness came up, and it's something that has kind of been a topic that comes in and out of my life. Then I try to apply it in some ways, and this seemed like a good opportunity to talk about it and whatnot.
Absolutely. Would have been a little easier had I not relocated to the other side of the country. I mean, you kind of saw
Yeah,
the birth generation of the podcast, which is kind of cool. Like you saw it, the idea get like created, and then, well,
yeah, a
here
little
it
behind
is.
the scenes action, and
Right, exactly. Helped to generate, brainstorm, sending you the logo before it's released, all that type of stuff. So you saw the birth of it, which is pretty cool.
of course.
So, what would you say is like, how is mindfulness applicable into your life? Like, what is generally in your daily routine? I'm sure you have a pretty set schedule for the most part. Like, how is it applicable in your life? What is it you focus on?
Um, I don't know that my schedule's that set. I mean, so like work wise, it is, but sometimes I can be all over the place.
Right,
You know,
right,
I enjoyed. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy doing a lot of different things, whether it's out with people, or I went for a run earlier tonight. I can get pretty busy sometimes, and I can get more into it later. But sometimes I just, yeah, get overwhelmed by how much stuff I have going on,
right.
and
No, I definitely feel that.
yeah, and so sometimes my head will feel like kind of spaced out or all over the place, or going a mile a minute, or whatnot, and in trying to roll with some of that, so to speak. Yeah, I've come across mindfulness, and to define that, it's kind of just that being aware of what's going on right here, right now.
Right,
Um,
being in the moment.
whether Yeah, and for me, whether it's work or my own personal life, or anything in between, I can get kind of caught up in my head thinking about what's going on tomorrow, 10 years,
Right.
50 years down the line, or reflecting on past events in my own life or whatnot.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so bring it back to what's going on right here, right now, what's in front of me, what I can touch or smell or hear. Or for me, mindfulness isn't any kind of like magical pill or some thing that cures everything going on. For me, with mindfulness, it's not about just being happy all the time
Mhm.
be like just getting over something and blocking it out, or but it's more just saying acknowledging what's going on, um, externally, like I said, with all my senses, but also what's kind of going on. If my back is stiff, or if my mind feels like it's racing, or bland, or sad, or happy, and just kind of acknowledging that, and kind of without judgment. It's something I know that gets brought up when you read or look up stuff online.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I do kind of feel like shit here and there, or like instead of just being like, oh, I should just be happy, or react in a certain way, like, oh
That's almost an impossible standard to live by. There's the full pendulum of emotions that every single person has. So just the acknowledgement, that awareness is, it's what mindfulness is. It's the key.
yeah, it's not all bad, and saying, oh, this is so hard or that's bad, but it's
Right,
also like,
right.
oh yeah, I do kind of like this, and you're unashamed of it, big or small. Um,
Right, exactly, exactly. And I mean, mindfulness in itself has kind of become a buzzword of sense. Like
yeah, yeah, exactly.
it's it's viewed by a lot of people as like this sort of fad that's gonna, comes and goes. You had the fads of every era, I guess. Some people want to call mindfulness the fad of this era. I mean, how would you, if you were to talk to someone about this with no idea of mindfulness and they told you that, what would you say to them?
I could see their point. It's definitely something that's on the rise, and a lot of times you see it paired with yoga, or you see it paired with all these things. It kind of feels like this whole package, and so it might seem like that, but mindfulness is, in my understanding, is drawn from a lot of like Eastern Asian cultures or religions, and
Hmm.
it's been around for a while. Or um,
Right. Yeah.
so maybe in America or in a mainstream, it's a more recent
Right. I think
topic.
I think there's definitely you're right, it has been around for thousands of years. I mean, like, yoga goes all the way back to ancient India, so it's one of those topics where I think mainstream America is sort of realizing the need, like, maybe our culture is creating this sort of need to kinda step back and be more aware of our own emotions, our own bodies, what we're feeling day to day, and kind of getting away from that idea of we need to constantly be building for the future or celebrating the past. Just things in terms of we're so caught up in our minds that we're not presently aware of who we are, like now in this moment. I remember telling my mom, actually, I was right before I left, I was telling her about just meditation because she didn't really understand. And I said, yeah, I just find myself sometimes living in my own mind. There was no concept as to what that actually meant. So for someone who might not like for someone who has no concept of that, it's more of like they could definitely see it as some sort of fad that people are just jumping on the bandwagon to feel a part of something. But I think it goes a
Mhm.
lot deeper than that. I definitely would agree with you. It's not just this new hippie, hippie age thing, even though a lot of hippies do it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely not a cure all, or I think I'm generalizing, but in America, we like our quick fixes. I'm tired and I go grab a coffee. I've had a long day. I'll have a beer, or we like our like quick, immediate things. And I don't know. Maybe there's things wrong with that, but maybe there's not.
No,
But so
right, right.
mindfulness can kind of seem like an opposite or a paradox in some ways to that.
Absolutely. I
Um,
mean, I think we live in an age of instant gratification just all around. So it's, whether you're getting a like on Instagram, I mean, we're all guilty of it, just
yeah.
instant. You can post something and have your self esteem boosted almost immediately, but it's not like true. There's not a lot of things that give true fulfillment or allow you to reflect on current states and emotions. So definitely, definitely agree. Mindfulness is sort of the opposite of what we're doing as a I think a whole society in terms of our lifestyles and ways of living. So definitely a mindful way to live, not to overuse the word, I suppose.
Yeah, and mindfulness is something I find myself like kind of unintentionally doing or that I was doing through certain activities. For example, if I go out for a run, some days I'm excited to go for a run, some days I'm just kind of forcing myself to do it. But typically put on my headphones, just got a Apple Watch recently, been playing with that. And I start running. I kind of do almost like what I call like a systems check. You're kind of like, all right, are my shoes tied or like, is it cold? Am I like, what muscles hurt? And just kind of get in touch with that. And my mind is kind of systematically going through like, okay, like what hurts? What's like, do I have to adjust my stride or anything? Um, and it's something I've kind of been doing anytime I go for a run, especially if it's like a 5K, 10K, half marathon style race. I was doing that without always knowing that I was kind of practicing mindfulness, but it was just kind of that letting your mind,
Right.
your body get in touch and like, all right, yeah, this does kind of hurt, or I do not,
Being
you know,
aware of what your body's responses, needs are. Yeah, that's absolutely a form of unconscious like mindfulness, being in
yeah,
being in the moment for your body.
yeah, and with that, um, it doesn't make the run much easier, but it just like
Right.
helps me to focus on what I'm doing during the run, and like if I'm pushing myself pretty hard mentally or physically, noticing that and whatnot. And then for me, the translation into everyday life can be kind of interesting. I do that for a run, and then it's like, all right, like some days I get to work, I sit down, and my boss walks in, or I have emails, or get kind of caught up in the day. So I try to kind of sit there and just kind of do that system check, like, all right, like how's my desk look? How's my is my are my hips tight or whatever it may be? And so I've kind of been trying to apply that systems check, so to speak, to other areas. And with that, it allows me to focus on the task at hand, or whether it's a challenging or a complicated situation or something easy, and just be able to kind of tune into that. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, I like this idea that this systems check that you have. I like that overall idea because I think ultimately our body is the perfect example of a system that is constantly going and constantly moving. So performing this systems check and seeing, especially, let's talk about like the mind, for example. If the mind is, I found when the mind is constantly wandering, constantly, whether it be nervous or even just random thoughts, a lot of times I'm not in tune with my body or my surroundings or just the awareness in general. I mean, I think driving a car is a perfect example when the mind just, wanders off unless you're me for me, my radio was stolen out of my car. So half the time I'm
oh,
just
yeah, that's right. Yes.
half the time I'm just driving with no aims. I
No doors, no
no
radio, no
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 doors, no
aims.
radio, just chilling, letting the wind hit my face, but my mind is wandering, so I'm not really in the zone, I'm not really in the moment, and I find when the mind wanders, if anything, that's the only time when I might start to feel anxious or, scared. I mean, I used to have a lot of anxiety problems in the past, but it's just because my mind was so used to constantly moving and moving, and I'm not ever just sitting in the moment or like performing a check on myself. So, I mean, that's what I found. There's sort of this mind body connection to mindfulness in a sense. And it's ultimately the ultimate systems check. So I like that systems check that you have in place. And I think it is applicable to everything that you do in life.
Yeah, and I definitely wish I was much better at it and can say I do it in everything. There are
Well,
times where I'm
everybody does. Everybody
yeah, yeah,
does.
yeah. There are times I get home late from work and I have to rush off to a side job at the gym, and yeah, you're whizzing by and you're like, all of a sudden it's been a couple hours and you're like, wait, how did I even get here? So yeah, mindfulness is something that for me, you can't always be doing that systems check. It's fun to get lost up in the moment, or sometimes it can be challenging or whatnot. Yeah, so I try to like remind myself to be mindful of what's going on. One way that I found that helps me, that a lot of people I think find that helps, is calling attention to your breath and simply meditating. Yeah, meditation for me isn't always about like sitting in a dark room and with my eyes closed, but there I'll be like, yeah, working at the gym or working in a lab, and you just take a deep breath, let it out, and kind of like bring. That's my reminder to bring it back to the moment and handle the good, the bad, the ugly of whatever's going on.
Absolutely, reconnecting the mind and the body, and I think the biggest misconception about meditation is that it is just some sitting with yourself in the dark and there's nothing else going on. I think meditation in itself is it can be almost anything. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to meditate. A lot of times it is just you can be anywhere and just start focusing on your breath and start focusing, gaining awareness of your surroundings and how your body's feeling. I mean, and there's so many different ways to get into doing that. And I think the first step is just learning your breath and learning to control your breath and the patterns and gaining that awareness because it's ultimately what's connecting your whole body, allowing your bringing in oxygen to your body, that life force energy. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just thinking I stopped by the seminar at work the other day. The topic was on is it preventing depression across the lifespan? It was mindfulness based cognitive therapy application of it. And yeah, the professor speaking was I can't pronounce his name too well. It's Willem Ken or something. But anyways,
he can call
uh,
into the show and correct it.
yeah, he mentioned that, like you're saying, there's some misconceptions about meditation. He said it's simply just calling attention to your, inhale and exhale, and that's it. There's a lot of other components that people associate with meditation that do work or can help or are interesting, and they're kind of added bonuses. But yeah, there's no fancy there's no smoke and mirrors. It's pretty
Right,
straightforward.
exactly. It's a tool that you can use in the toolbox. Like you said earlier, it's not something that's gonna fix everything. And by gaining awareness of your breath and your um, emotions and everything that you're feeling in your body and connecting it all, that allows you, that I've found the number one benefit from meditation for me is it allows me to analyze myself, my situations, my surroundings, and I'm better able to make decisions, instead of just rationally reacting to something or irrationally reacting to something. Sorry. I'm sort of able to better process and better feel what might be right for me in certain situations. So, and I do believe there is a meditation type for everybody, even if it's just sitting and getting comfortable focusing on the breath. I think it's something that a lot of people try different types of meditations. Like they might maybe go to a meditation class or look one up on YouTube. And the first time for everybody, if you're doing something like that, it's going to be, oh, I can't do this. I'm constantly thinking. But that's like part of it. Part of the meditation is thinking, and those thoughts come in, and you just acknowledge it, and you just continue to focus on your breath afterwards. That's so normal. I mean, I meditate every morning, and that happens to me at least once every session. So it's not like you become this guru.
Yeah, no, there are days where ideally, I wish I had this great morning routine, but my wife can attest to it. I'm kind of not a morning person, and
But that's fine.
especially if I don't have that first sip of coffee. But yeah, it would be great to have that.
Everybody's bodies are so different. Not everybody can be a morning person. Morning people
Yeah,
might.
no, but so there's sometimes I don't even kind of I'm not mindful until I get to work or while I'm biking or whatnot. There are days where, yeah, I catch myself slipping and yeah, they're kind of funny. You're like, wow, my mind's been going all day, or I've been going just kind of like going
Right.
with the flow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even though I have a morning routine that I follow, it's meditating, and then I usually will do some journaling. There's this future self journaling where it's like you focus on
Okay,
anyone for you or anyone who's listening. It's holistic psychologist on Instagram. Pretty cool. Like just you work through your old habits and tendencies. So I do that. I'll do a little bit of yoga and then I'll go to the gym. But I have to wake up at like 4 in the morning to do that. And but
it's a
I've
solid day.
so I mean by the time it hits like 9 o'clock, I'm in bed at like 9 p.m. I'm done. I'm out for the
Ooh,
night.
yeah. What
Like
time does,
that's
who's it, Mark Wahlberg? Doesn't he get up at, like, 3 or 4 AM and he's got
yeah,
this,
3
like,
or
crazy
4.
morning?
Same with The
Yeah.
Rock, same like,
Oh, man.
it's one of those things, like, I found for me, when I get up in the morning and do these I set my intentions to have a great day, I generally will, but even then, there's times during the day where things come up. I mean, we're ultimately gonna deal with stressful situations in our
Can I
lives.
if I can play devil's advocate, wouldn't, like,
Yeah.
the, uh, the yogi expert or the master guru or some expert in this field say that maybe not even set your mind to have a great day, but just to have a day, you know?
That is actually very true, very true. What th Usually what I have for my intention is to present the best version of myself to the day. So,
Okay.
ultimately, with whatever when I say have a great day, ultimately my goal is to put my best self forward and let the world respond around that. And by doing that, most days are going to I'm going to most days I'll go to bed and I'll feel like, all right, today was an all right day. I did it, and I'm able to reflect and see how I responded to situations maybe differently than I did in the past. So, but that's where meditation has gotten to me. Like that's where it's helped me in terms of being able to reflect on my days and really set the right intentions. I mean, because in the past I would just wake up, roll out of bed and slump through work and it's and I just found that I didn't feel as fulfilled and I didn't have as much creative energies, I feel like. It just didn't allow like, now at the end of the days, I mean, before it hits 9 o'clock, of course. When it's like, 6 or 7, I still feel like I wanna do something, I wanna be creative, and didn't used to always have that. Like, I'd sorta just be like, "Alright, I'm done. I went to work, I'm done. That's it." So, if it just kinda puts me in the best position to be myself.
Yeah, yeah. For me, mindfulness, bring attention to whatever's going on, it can really help to tackle challenges in life, and it's not just about, like, feeling cool and comfortable and
Right, right.
um, laid back, but it's about, like, if work sucks or if something sucks and just kinda acknowledging that, or, like, if something feels like it's too much and just, like, yeah, acknowledging that. I love practicing mindfulness, like, while I'm doing certain activities, sitting at home and sitting on the couch and just looking around the room and being mindful
Right,
is
like,
not too appealing to me.
coming to
Yeah,
the
it's
attention that there's a water bottle sitting right to my right and looking at the beauty and the shape of it, the
for me
colors, the
that yeah, for me that's it's cool, but it can be kinda challenging. So I do like to get out and I love to run or ski or I used to rock climb for a few years.
well, I
I
think
love I bike to work and yeah.
activities like that and, like, being outside in nature, I mean, part of the reason I don't particularly I'm not a huge city person, it's just because it feels artificial in the sense that I'm not connected to the rest of the world, and I know it sounds weird
Mhm.
because there's so many people in the cities, like, more than you'd find out in the wilderness, but I feel like it's just more I'm able to be in a more mindful place mentally when I'm surrounded by the actual earth as opposed to like cities and huge buildings and cars and just so if anything like activities like skiing and rock climbing that's like very mindful because you're interacting with the earth in a way almost is what I would say.
Yeah, no, I think I'd agree with you on that. Um, yeah, for me, all those activities, yeah, they're similar in some ways. They're kind of a lot of solo sports, but through all them, you definitely have to have your yeah, like going back to your point about your mind and your body connected. From when I was rock climbing, it was a style where you don't have the harness, so you can't just be thinking about what's coming up at work or that email that happened or something you said to someone or whatever it may be. You have to really focus on a certain rock hold and so you don't fall and injure yourself.
Right, absolutely. And if you're
So a lot
going
of those,
down the ski slope and you're at 50 miles an hour and you're thinking
yeah,
about what you got to do at work when you get back from vacation then you're in some trouble.
yeah, exactly. So I like a I don't know names for it, but like an active mindfulness or mindfulness through activities.
Yeah, active based mindfulness and like it's sort of in a sense, I mean, you hear a lot from even just society in general, like being in the flow, like in the moment. think that's a form of mindfulness in itself that a lot of people do with their creative passions or sports, and they don't even necessarily call it mindfulness. So it's sort of finding moments like that in the everyday life because we
Mhm.
can't. I mean, unless you're competing in the Olympics, we ultimately can't ski every day. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah. Again, it's a practice. Like with any sport, you practice, but then you also go out and do it, or
right,
you have to take a break from it. So you can't do those things all the time.
right, right. So the seminar that you attended, I'm quite curious. I want to jump back to it.
Sure.
Not that we like steered away from it. I mean,
No, we can
it's
we
all
can
we're all on
jump
topic
all over.
here. But I'm curious. So this was like sponsored by your work. Is your work doing like mindfulness based initiatives? Because that's something I find very intriguing. I mean, and I work in a school, so like I wish my I think it would benefit my work to have something like that, but there's not even a mention for it. So is that like something that's being like enforced? Well, not enforced, but something
Yeah,
being
this was a seminar series, the Center for Health and Happiness at the Harvard School of Public Health.
Mhm.
Um, so it's just kind of open to any staff. I'm not sure if it was open to the public or not, but it's just part of this like monthly seminar series they had going on.
Right. And like what was like the takeaway that you got from it?
Um, yeah, so the overarching topic to go back was just mindfulness, but its application to cognitive therapy and not just reducing, but actually preventing depression across the lifespan. So it's a very like specific application of mindfulness and not just from a social science point of view, but a more of a hard science point of view.
Right. I mean, giving those hard science like data to back it up, which is always important. I mean, because that's kind of the not I'd call the kryptonite of the mindfulness movement and social sciences that there's not a lot of hard science to
Yeah, it's
necessarily back
hard.
it up.
It's yeah, it's hard to study. It's not an easy
Right.
experiment in a lab bench or something, and
Right.
um, and it can be kind of there can be some like vague terms that are used. So, um,
Mhm.
anyways, but as far as the takeaway, yeah, he was talking about some just understanding the mechanism, how mindfulness and the mind body connection works, and he defined kind of what goes on during while someone is depressed, and whether it's a shorter or a long term thing, and just understanding this cycle of how your body's feeling, how that in turn affects your mind and vice versa. Um,
Right. I mean, I worked in mental health last year at the school I was working at, and it was like moderate to severe. And there was for I would see there was particular students when they were coming in extremely depressed, like not even able to go to class, just staying in the learning center. They would oftentimes be like physically sick too. So it was sort of just the mind and made the body sick in the sense. I mean, in a way, I'm interested your thoughts since you work on science. I'm not a scientist, but like,
I mean, I'm no but
but like
no,
what
it is. I do appreciate kind of the general science world.
right, you're much more of a
Paying.
scientifically but, like, what is I mean, could this in a way sort of explain, like, placebos? I mean, you give, like, a sugar pill and suddenly someone doesn't have their I don't know, what is just some sort of physical ailment, but it's like a activity of the mind tricking them. I mean, could that be, applicable in this, situation or idea?
Possibly, I guess I don't know enough to answer that question fully. Um, but yeah,
That's true. I don't wanna throw out
yeah,
false
yeah, they're at
information.
such early stages of studying some of this, and I, generally speaking, for a while it was seen as more of a Eastern medicine, and Western medicine's been more focused on whether it's certain drugs or certain like physical treatments and more treating like the body and the mind was not forgotten about, but just thought to be like different entities.
There's yeah, separate entities,
Um,
exactly.
there's some cool research being done. It's a long process, and it's hard to study and follow up with people for a while. But there's some cool work being done to kind of understand this connection and just how I guess we as humans can kind of create our own realities in some ways.
Right, how this whole system kind of operates in unity. You don't need to give me more evidence. Like, I've seen how my mind can impact my body. I mean, even just like going into the gym, if I'm going to work out and I'm like, all stressed out and super anxious, if I let that carry into the workout and I don't forget about it and I'm still thinking, I'm not going to be able to lift as much weight, for example. So it's about kind of forgetting. But I found, like you mentioned, like Eastern medicine, the East and like these Chinese and Tibetan, they were considered more like advanced in the, the early days of civilization. Like the West was always sort of lagging behind until we got to like this capitalistic approach, and that's sort of the same time, this idea of the mind and body being separate, like this dualistic idea, separate entities. But the East has always sort of had this idea as one unified connection, and that's sort of what all their medicines are based off of, all of their different entities. And I don't want to say that they're taking a better approach. I just think that their ideas have always been kind of spot on with it. So I'm interested to see where the studies go, 50 years from now in the West, just in terms of how it plays out.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm hopeful, but, I'm also kind of skeptical of,
Hmm.
um, as long as funding can keep up and,
Right.
um,
In my
there are definitely some concerns about mindfulness is hard. It's not a product that you can sell, so it's not
Right.
like some
Exactly.
some drug that all these companies are rushing
Right.
to to manufacture. But
Right. And
nothing wrong with those. But
no, right. And definitely am appreciative of all the technological advancements the West has come up with and sort of all the things they've been able to cure. But I do have doubts in a way as well, because you're right. This isn't something that's going to make a bunch of money. And not that I like to think that science is, just in general, research is as unbiased as it can be, right? But ultimately, the it's my belief that science is funded by these organizations and companies that want to make money. So they're going to naturally have more studies that are going to make them money. We may not have as many studies focused on mindfulness. It kind of needs to come from a perspective of like holistic wellness as opposed to profit.
science is all about be opening up your work to critiques and yeah, science is all about trial and error. It's about kind of taking your opinion out of something and saying, all right, if the facts are there and it works, then here's my conclusion, and we got to stick with it. But I found this conclusion. Evan, please correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah,
Cool. So going away from that a little bit, away from this, I guess, the sciency aspect, how would you say, how do you see it? I mean, we talked a little bit about mindfulness in the everyday life and how you use it, but how would you say you were brought into this? I mean, ultimately, I found for myself, it was sort of by accident. Like I didn't ask to start being more mindful, but like, is there like a pivotal moment for you, or is it just sort of a overarching thing over time?
I'd say it was kind of a domino effect or something that I didn't just wake up and start Googling the word mindfulness, and I didn't have, but kind of a domino effect or some reactions to some things that were going on in my personal life at various times. And I think I'm kind of I don't know, I try to be inquisitive or be open to some ideas, and it was something that came up. Um, yeah. So, yeah, recently it's been a topic that I've kind of been interesting or more interested in. It was stressed in work recently or in personal life, just felt kind of busy. But years ago, yeah, no, in high school, I definitely kind of stressed or worried sometimes, specifically on like academics, and I did pretty well academically, but there were days where I'd let it get the best of me, and not trying. No one, as in like my parents or certain teachers, didn't force me to. get any certain grades, or but I definitely had these like perfectionist tendencies, or like, I would want to do something well, but I would definitely kind of caught up in whatever I was doing. And anyway, so I kind of like worried, but I don't know, just thought it was normal, or nothing major. And then, yeah, I went to college and started getting more and more stressed out or anxious at points, and was struggling to find ways of like, coping with some of that anxiety. And it was something that was like newer to me, and maybe leaving out certain personal details of it, but um, yeah, that's at the time I'd been going to like church for a little bit, or trying to pray about certain things, but it just didn't seem to be working. Or I'd go to the gym, and just again, I was like stressed out, or couldn't find a break from feeling stressed, and not knowing why. It was kind of a confusing time. Um, yeah, and through trying to understand what was going on, because I'm not someone who likes to give up. Like I said, I kind of can be a perfectionist. Like, all right, I gotta figure this out. Like, and and at times I kind of got carried away, and it would just stress me out more trying to figure out why I was stressed. And yeah, it was a friend had kind of introduced me to this author, Pema Chodron. I grew up going to like church, and then kind of like faded away, and then was going a little more in high school and college, but not bashing any religion, but I don't know. Oh no, yeah, I met so many great people and appreciate it, but
Mhm.
I would find myself kind of get caught up, or in my head, or like praying, or whatnot, and you're like, why isn't it working? And you're almost getting like frustrated with it, and so
Yeah,
for
it
me,
just
like
didn't
religion was kind of
feel right.
there and whatnot,
Like
but I was definitely open to like these more some of the readings by like Pema Sheridan, some of her books, and it was, yes, a lot of it felt pretty foreign as far as some of the terminology, or I kind of like roll my eyes. And,
right,
um,
right.
but yeah, and through reading some of her books, was talking about she she would talk about mindfulness, and kind of it seemed counterintuitive, but ideas of like embracing the chaos of a situation, and
Mhm.
instead of like trying to
Right.
wish you weren't in the situation. And again, over time, uh, through several years, and I hope more of my life, I've been trying to apply some of this, and there are days where I'm pretty fucking bad at it, and there are days where, like, yeah, like, I handle things all right. You get mad like anyone else, or you're just like pretty shitty person some days, or like, or just an okay or whatever. But um, yeah, some of these practices have been kind of interesting.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I would say I took a similar journey that. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I mean, everybody today in today's world, in schools in particular, and as someone who works in a school, it almost sickens me that it's all about, we're not doing anything to teach about stress management or how to be aware of ourselves and our emotions. It's all about, let's pile on the work and let's just make these kids get good grades so they can go to college and they can get a good job. So it's, if anything, like the stress that comes from that is just so normal. And then we never really
Yeah,
learn about how to manage that or how to live with that or live mindfully unless we stumble upon it or get introduced to it. I mean, I got introduced to it by others, and I think that's sort of, it's almost like an initiation of a sense. That's what it kind of feels like. You're initiating other people into this like mindful way of living, mindful life. But I mean, I had to go through even now. I mean, they're definitely not perfect. It's there is no perfect. There is no end. It's just constant improvement.
yeah. Perfect can be boring. I can be a perfectionist in so many ways, but and then I remind myself, well, perfect can be kind of boring. It's fun to have uh, some craziness going on, but not without getting overly caught up in it. And not to sound super cliche, but it's all about the balance. And
No, it absolutely is. You can't go about like trying and even trying to hold yourself to a perfect standard too. It's like it's impossible. Just flow, just let it life take its course. And I mean, it takes a while to get to even like that point of realization, and let alone like live by that. But through these through mindfulness and over several years, it does eventually happen. It does eventually take place. You do get to that point. But I do think if we started that younger, we would have people coming out of high school who are able to better respond to the world and better able to take control of their lives. And ultimately, I think the people coming out of schools would be fit to run the world. You know what I mean? Like it's so many of the generations nowadays are just we just pile on work and stress, and that's all that matters. That's all they think that
Mhm.
matters because that's all they're told. That's all they know about. So we're kind of molding them in a scary. I think it's a scary way, a scary future if it's not corrected, which is why I love what your work is doing in terms of providing these, seminars and, encouraging a positive, mindful
Yeah, it's,
way of being, essentially.
yeah, I mean, like you said, it's mindfulness isn't just about sitting around, but about preparing whether it's kids or adults or anyone to be able to like take on the world, and uh, it's very active. It can seem kind of like
Mhm.
passive, or you're not doing anything, you're just sitting around and like, all right, I'm just waiting for the world. But I'd say it's the opposite. I think it's about like being mindful of what you want to accomplish, or being yeah, I mean, if things are hard or confusing or shameful or happy or loving or beautiful, it just like
Mhm.
acknowledging those.
Absolutely, yeah. And you're right. Ultimately we can't just kind of let the world we can't just sit back and let the world happen. You kind of have to like take charge and like be a creator of the things that you want. I mean, it took me a while to when I first got the idea, let's just say this podcast, like I think first had the idea in like February around that. And for a while there was a couple months where I was just kind of like not really doing anything towards it. And I did realize like, all right, if I'm not going to actively take control and create this myself, which I have the capability to do as long as I'm like putting myself in the right situation, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
So
and
that's what I've found.
yeah, I'd say it's about like welcoming the chaos of life and
Welcoming the chaos, embracing it, loving it, being
yeah,
one
or
with the
just welcoming
chaos.
like, yeah, if something's boring, acknowledging that, yeah, this is kind of boring.
Another question I have for you. What is
Sure, possible answer for you.
this is a little bit of a taboo subject. I myself am a big believer of now being in science fields. I'm a big believer in alternative medicines and alternative plant-based medicines. Now, most people think that like alternative medicines they're rubbish. They're garbage. Do you have like a view on just alternative or like plant medicines in general? Is there anything that
I guess,
what is your take on like this sort of holistic approach to healing that's outside of the realm of the current like science community? Because I feel like there's a whole like side of healing that is not within the science community.
yeah, I guess the science side of me says that, well, it's not alternative science if it works. There are some things that, the science community just hasn't studied yet. So there are certain things that I don't necessarily agree with. Homeopathy, that kind of goes counter to science teaching of how dilutions work, but not to open up that Pandora's box. But I'd say, yeah, I welcome other ideas. Um, if they work,
Right. I think there's a lot
then
of
then great.
like
So
there's a lot of there's a lot of skepticism in the scientific community about I mean, I myself I will I will gladly say on the air I am a psychedelic adventurer and believe in the ideas of the just in a ceremonial sense going in with the right intentions and for healing purposes. I don't think people should just be like roaming the streets taking mushrooms, but you know what I mean? Like it's sort of like,
yes.
there's these are medicines that have been used for thousands of years. You look at ayahuasca and all these people going to ayahuasca retreats in, South America and taking through these like medicinal shamans. I think there's such little scientific research on it in America because all of this stuff is
I know
classified as illegal.
it's it's yeah, it's such a tricky situation. The medical community it's focused on doing no harm, so there's definitely some skepticism or caution with certain psychedelics. But I definitely think there's some interesting work being done, or like was it Denver or Colorado as a whole just legalized like mushrooms? So
Yeah, they're actually opening up like a John Hopkins. I wanna say John Hopkins. It don't if it's not John Hopkins, sorry, John Hopkins, you can detach your name and denounce my podcast, but I believe they're opening up a research facility in Colorado that is focused solely on treatment, with psilocybin for, like, PTSD and other issues like that, and it's actually from the limited studies they've had, they've been able to show that it just sometimes one therapy session with psilocybin actually will cure PTSD because you're able to get to the root of the problem for a lot of these things as opposed to just maybe treating some of the symptoms of the problem.
yeah, and in like medicine, sometimes there's you can like mask symptoms like if you have a cut, you put a Band-Aid on your finger, you're kind of covering a wound, but, if the cut is because you keep tripping and falling, the Band-Aid's not gonna prevent you from tripping and falling, you gotta tie your shoes.
Right, exactly.
Um, where I'm going with that is, actually, I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
No, I get exactly what you're saying.
Uh, no, I think some of those psychedelics can my understanding is that they can really, like, get to the heart of an issue in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead of masking certain symptoms, I appreciate a good beer, but after a long day, and it just beer just kind of like masks the symptoms and does it's not always like curing things that went on during a day. So, but yeah, I got for a gift recently from my lovely wife a book by Michael Pollan. I'd read a couple of his books. There's like The Omnivore's Dilemma, and I'm blanking on the other ones.
But he wrote
And
a
he's got
really
a new book.
popular one, right, about psychedelic medicine, from what I understand, right?
His newer one is called How to Change Your Mind. With the new science of psychedelics teaches us about consciousness, dying, addiction, depression, and transcendence. And I can say I haven't read the book yet, but it's on my long list of books to read. I have a habit of having a couple books going on at the same time, but so I'm very curious to see what his experience was.
But
Yeah.
no, it's one
Um,
of those things. I've heard a lot of people talking about that book, and I think it is a growing field. I think it's gonna be one of those things that ultimately over time, when we start seeing more and more research showing the benefits of these plant-based medicines, people aren't gonna need to go to some retreat in Peru to possibly experience the benefits of it. It's I don't think it'll ever get to a point where you can just go to CVS and buy a packet of mushrooms, but I don't think we should have that point. I don't think that's necessary. I think
yeah, that would be a weird world, huh?
some alternate reality that
Oh man.
but the mushroom, the
Yeah,
psilocybin aisle.
you go down, you buy like you go to CVS, you buy I don't know, a water and some candy and a pack of mushrooms. That would be a weird time. So no, I think with specific applications, oh, I was walking past the gym the other day, and I was on Instagram, and one of the nearby locations uh, popped up. It said a mobile ketamine treatment.
Whoa.
And I Googled it. Yeah, and I looked into it because I haven't seen this building. I've never done ketamine, but so I Googled it, and there's a place that was offering it, and I was reading on their website. There's some work being done uh, with ketamine and alleviating depression, and not just like as a short term fix, but as a kind of a. My understanding is like a one and done or multiple times, um, and not just depression, but some other things going on.
Right,
So
right. Oh, well,
I'm curious as to yeah. I don't. I guess I don't know enough.
no, that's fascinating. I mean, it's just an example of these like other methods of healing. And I mean, for myself, like my personal experience, I mean, I was someone who's always been socially anxious, filled with this sort of like, I think the root of it was like a self doubt that, but that's like sort of so normal in like today's society. It's constant competition, people pitted against each other. But through psychedelics, then, I should have went in with a better, more healing intention. I don't think people should just be dropping, and just taking crazy
Just
amounts all the time. Ev
no, with a lot of things, I think going back to balance or
Right,
moderation or,
exactly. So I'm not telling everybody to just go out and, like, say, "Th
um
this is me." So that happens. Oh, no. But anyways, through it, like, it was able to I was kinda able to see my whole being and realize that overcome that self-doubt that existed from within myself, and being able to see myself in a more positive light, and was able to change the mindset by getting to the root of the problem, because I didn't even know the root of these issues. It was just something that was always there. So I think there's potential when used in a therapeutic setting. You can really get beneficial results, and that's from personal experience. I don't even need research to tell me that, but the research backs it up. So
so we just you just we'll have yeah, we'll have a Starbucks and we'll have the LSD bucks and the mushroom bucks.
I mean, you never know. I don't know if we'll get to that point, but
Um, no, but, yeah, on a more serious note, yeah, I think it can be a pretty powerful tool. I've heard it described as almost like ripping the Band-Aid off,
yeah,
a lot of layers to your own self
your
and
own self,
whatever the self
your
is.
own your own level of consciousness in a sense. You see things from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, going back to mindfulness is it's about kind of like shifting your perspective and again, it doesn't fix everything. It's like going to the gym, you have a workout plan, say, "Oh, okay, here's how I'm gonna conquer my goals." You still got to put in the work. Um, and there's days where you don't want to work out or you get injured and you stumble, um, but yeah, like it should no shifting your perspective definitely be a pretty simple but
Oh,
profound
absolutely. And like it
thing
has
that
an
I've
impact on
found.
everything. Just like because we do have I mentioned this in a different podcast. We have the choice on how we perceive ourselves. I mean, but I think a lot of it is like buried in the subconscious. So we don't actively go about choosing to be anxious necessarily, but it's just something that through over time we subconsciously had these feelings, and they get buried in they get buried in the brain. It just kind of happens. And for me, if I wanted to take it back to psychedelics, but you can achieve this through just meditation and being mindfully aware. You kind of see the other perspective, and you're able to get to the root of the problems. If anything, psychedelics is just a speed up of like, I don't know, maybe it's probably like, I would
Like
view it as the equivalent of like,
it's like 10 years of cognitive therapy down in,
exactly.
I
It's
guess,
like doing
a couple hours. Right?
it's like doing a 500-hour yoga teacher training in like 2 hours. It's like that's the equivalent, and like, but also gaining all the insight. But
2 hours, but it feels like a million
right,
hours. But
exactly.
what is time anyway?
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
but you have to actually though then consciously make the choice to, because you gain like a sense of enlightenment. You have to consciously make the choice to can pursue that further, or you will fall back into those subconscious patterns. And it is a lot of work because it's still there even after like the transcending experience. But you just have to.
Yeah, I mean, life goes on and good things, bad things, weird things come up and you gotta keep rolling with it and
Oh, exactly.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, with the Feeling Good podcast by David,
Yeah.
this Dr. David
Is this the one?
Burns. I
This the
think
one
I
you
think I
sent
might
me,
have sent
right?
it to you. Yeah. And so he's a clinically trained MD, but he mentioned something about, no one can be enlightened all the time. People go through stages of enlightenment. You come in and out of it, and yeah, he mentioned. something about like you deserve about 5 good days per week. If you have 7 good days in a row, then I think he mentioned, you should have lithium and be toned
Right.
down because kind of manic. And if you have one good day in a week, then it might be something kind of off. So it's not
Right.
again recurring topics of balance
I mean, I think that's definitely like
or whatnot. But
overarching theme that we're getting at, living this balanced life. Because I mean, you're right. There's an I would say what today we're recording this on a Friday. We've had 5 days of the week. I'd say like 4 of them have been like pretty good, solid days. I mean, one of them was just like, oh, wow, this sucks. I want to go. Like by the end of the day, I was so done. Like
yeah,
but that's just it's part of
yeah,
the
but
human experience.
yeah, um, yeah. There are days where I get home like, oh, that today sucked, and I'm like, wait, no, I'm just tired from the
Hmm.
day. Like, there's actually a lot of good, or there's like, yeah, there are some moments where time kind of keeps moving on, whether we like it or not. So,
Yeah, and we just keep getting older. We're not getting any younger.
yeah, it's true.
All right, I'm gonna ask. Do you know anything about? Because I feel like you would be interested, and maybe if you don't know a ton about them now, do you know anything about like the chakras, our chakra system?
Not too much. Not no, not too much. Uh, I've heard some mentions of it through like I've gone to yoga, not as much as I would like to these days. I went a couple weeks ago. Um, conversations with like friends, but it's not something that I know too much
I
about.
feel like it's something you would be interested in, and just in terms of you can even you can even look at it from like a science, like a hard science point of view of, you know, science agrees that like everything is energy, right? That's sort of the universal law. Everything is made of energy. So the chakra system,
Yeah, it's made of
yeah,
something.
something matter, energy, what it everything breaks down to the individual atoms. But when you're talking about like the chakras, those are sort of the seven energy. And some people argue there's like more than seven. I mean, there's like seven main ones, but they are like the energy centers for our body. And ultimately, a lot of people attribute certain illnesses to certain blockages in these like chakras because it runs
Okay,
from like what's called your root, which is like down towards the bottom base of your spine, like tailbone, all the way up through the crown, top of your head. And like that's sort of like your spinal energy system. When you breathe in, you can like feel it all the way down to your stomach, like that area. So it's sort of where the energy flows in our body. And so different blockages throughout can cause different ailments or illnesses. So, and there's starting, it's one of those things again where it's been around for hundreds of years in like Chinese and like Tibetan, um, particularly Buddhism, but it's not something that's really caught on so much in the West. But just the
okay, yeah,
study of
yeah.
energy, like is and like these blockages is something I think that we'll see more of the studies of it because I found that when I do like chakra cleansing, I went to this pranic healing at a meditation center, and they actually like do a
Okay,
reading of like your body's as your body gives off energy, and they can like tell these people who are like super advanced. I don't know how they do it, but they can tell like which chakras are like blocked, and they use specific tactics to actually unblock it. And like I definitely notice a difference after going for one of those. Like I feel like in this immense calm that I would normally only
okay.
feel after a long period of like meditation, like pure bliss. So
Interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious. For you, do you see it as more um, it's something you have to recurringly do, or like
um
something you kind of go to, and
for me, the just like the pranic healing or just like chakras in general. The
I guess either.
I've gotten to the point where since I'm paying so much attention to my body and how I'm feeling overall, like kind of notice if there's a particular emotion I have, or maybe I'm starting to feel like physically sick in some way. And ultimately, I'm not like an expert on any of the chakras by any means, but like
Yeah.
when I actually do like chakra healing type of meditation, I mean, I would just look one up on like YouTube. There's some good guided meditations on YouTube of just chakra balancing and balancing your whole system. I definitely feel this sort of oneness, this like unity throughout my whole body that like, all right, I'm all systems go right now. everything, like I just
Mhm.
feel this like bliss throughout my body. So, but it is one of
Interesting.
those things you don't necessarily actively say, "Oh, my root chakra is blocked right now." Like it's one of those things that
They don't give you like a diagnostic.
well, it's yeah, it's one of those things that you'd have to really be like in deep in the yogi like world if you were gonna be like, all right, so today my root chakra and my solar plexors flexes and my third eye are the ones that are really dealing with blockages because of this and that. It's more of just being aware of
Interesting.
your body's full system
Mhm.
and then kind of going from there. You don't need to necessarily be an expert on all seven chakras to kind of get the benefiting results of studying them. And then even just like one meditation a week on chakra balancing, I find like I'm able to not necessarily focus on it that much, but it's something I have in the back of my mind. I don't actively every day think about my chakras, but
Interesting.
supposedly the seven energy points in your body, and I definitely when you do meditations focusing on it, you can definitely feel the energy. I mean, so think of the rainbow, right? Roy G.
Yeah,
Biv,
yeah, yeah.
red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo.
Roy G. Biv.
Roy G. Biv.
'Cause it reminds me of 6th grade, yeah.
But like supposedly each energy that from each chakra is associated with a different color. So if you actually look at the rainbow, it goes in order: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. That's the order of the seven chakras as
Mhm.
well. So it's the root, the sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and then your crown. If you were to pranic healers and yogis, like they associate each of those colors like in order with the chakras. I don't know where I was going with that. It's interesting.
Well, no, I guess to ask you a question, like, does this tie in directly to mindfulness, or is
Yes.
this
Yes,
a
it's
subset
I
of it,
think
or
it
how,
it ties directly into mindfulness in the sense of like sort of having that mindful awareness of your own body and that mind body
Mhm.
connection. Because when I found that, let's say the root chakra is something that you feel like you're connected to earth, right? And that's sort of your when there's a root chakra blockage, it ultimately affects all of your other blockages. So I found that in the
Okay.
past, I would get like very much in my own head that I feel like disconnected just from the world around me. And that would lead to a lot of other ailments. But when I would just take it back to connecting with like the earth, we just like walking barefoot outside and like noticing the trees or something. I am I
Yeah,
am one
it's
of those people who walks barefoot outside, by the way.
y
But
yeah, no, yeah, did you, weren't you longboarding barefoot down the
yeah, it's
Charles? And
16 miles.
yeah, um, no, to go back to an earlier point on mindfulness, in a seminar I went to, at work the other day, they talked about mindfulness and having 3 main, I forget the words you use for it, but 3 main factors or 3 main components. Um, one of them being attentional executive control, kind of like reclaiming attention, your choice in where your own mental attention is focused. The second point being decentering, kind of less self-centered, simply. And the third is self-compassion, and more self-love and
Hmm.
empathy. And so I'm curious if, again, I don't know as much about workers and whatnot, but I wonder if sometimes Western or Eastern medicines can be talking about the same things or using different terminologies. Or I'm curious. Sometimes there's different cultures have different ways
Right.
of almost explaining a similar
I mean, I
approach.
definitely think it's all centered around the same ideas. Like it's sort of I found just by practicing this on my own and like starting to explore about my own body, the idea of mindfulness, just by exploring it, then starting to study different like Eastern religions like Buddhism, and these like philosophies, it's almost sort of like backed up a lot of my experiences. So I think it's sort of like this universal concept in a way. Like it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's east, west. It's all sort of centered around this same idea about this energy system in our body and our bodies as this one unit that is connected to this e- earth, which is also one unit. I mean, if you look at it, so kind of that's sort of what I found.
Interesting. Yeah. The To give a plug for that speaker the other day, he has a new book on Amazon
Mhm.
called Mindfulness, Ancient Wisdom Meets Modern Psychology. So it's definitely a hot topic uh,
Right.
going on right now,
I
and
mean, going back to it is sort of like that buzzword in a sense, you know? It's
yeah, I mean, hot topic, but not just hopefully not just a buzzword, but trying to understand what's going on.
but yeah, I think a lot of people do want to, uh I think we're at an interesting point in our
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring for sure, and it's my understanding it's definitely something that's more mainstream in the U.S. Like back 50 years ago, it's
Mhm.
some of this wasn't as applied, or people um, were kind of dismissed for,
Right.
yeah, at least in the U.S., kind of dismissed for certain ways of thinking,
No,
uh,
absolutely.
like that or whatnot. So, I don't know. Personally, I try to be open to a lot of things these days. I mean, I can go overboard and
Mm.
get pretty anxious about them, but I try to be pretty different approaches.
No,
So,
yeah, absolutely, and I think
um,
that's important. I mean, just by talking about this stuff, my it was funny, my grandfather actually, he said, "You sound like Timothy Leary," and I don't know if you know Timothy Leary, but he was this, and for anyone who's listening and doesn't know him, he was this researcher, a psychologist at Harvard in the '60s, and um, he started experimenting with like LSD and LSD trials. Not to get back on the psychedelics topic, but exploring this like idea of like consciousness and oneness and like these ideas that were traditionally only like Eastern, philosophies. And he ended up like being fired from Harvard. And at one point, for his like ideas about this, like Richard Nixon called him the most dangerous man in America. So like it's
it's
sort of
funny.
like it was a very radical way of thinking, but I think it is becoming more popular because it's almost like needed in us. There's so many just stressors and things in our lives that don't make a lot of sense. So trying to, take it back to the source, the root of who we are. That's kind of what mindfulness is.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited and curious to see some practical applications of it. If you have an infection on your arm, you should still use like some antibiotics, or
Right.
get it checked out by a doctor. Mindfulness and calling attention to
Right.
that infection isn't going to make it go
Right.
away. Yeah, but it can kind of help you deal with it, I
No,
guess.
absolutely. But
Go to the
it's
doctor,
kind of the integration of
not freak out, but
mindfulness and like
yeah.
modern technology and modern advancements.
Mhm.
I mean, the lifespan was much shorter the hundreds of years ago, hundreds and thousands of years ago for a reason. So it's anything, it's the Western approach has brought us great advancement in so many fields and especially science.
Yeah, science tries to be all about trial and error. It's not immune to political stuff or funding, or
Right, right.
it does take place in the real world. But
Mm.
yeah, um, yeah. Did you have any more questions for me here on this podcast?
Well, normally I'd love to have listener questions and feedback. And when I asked, I did get one. I got one from Joe Mazzola. When is game night? When is game night? So if you want to answer when is game night first, and then we can always get into another topic afterwards.
I guess I'm not sure when this podcast will air, but hopefully soon.
The podcast will actually, I know exactly when it will air. December 2nd.
December 2nd. Okay.
So when is game night as of December
What
2nd?
year though?
2019. We're
2019
talking
or
2019. We're talking
yeah.
current. I'm not waiting that long. Scientific
What is time
scientific
anyways?
community will leave us behind if we're waiting that long. Who knows?
Funny.
But yeah. So is there any for somebody who, let's say somebody doesn't know anything about mindfulness, somebody doesn't know where to begin, and they come to you, they say, Mike, the all powerful guru of mindfulness.
No, no,
What
no, no.
can you where would you ultimately just send somebody who maybe wants to begin exploring this just idea, this topic? What would you what would you say to somebody? Would you give them any particular resources? What is your overarching, what's the word for it? Soapbox speech. I don't know if that's the right word. But what would you say to somebody?
Um, Let me think
Like
here.
the all powerful guru, words of wisdom.
I guess a master guru would tell, but I'm half joking but half serious, I guess. But um, yeah, there's so many great books, but I think it's right then and right there. It's about asking them what's going on in their head, and or just kind of in a way just helping them, going back to an earlier point, do that systems check, or um, give them that advice. And like I said, I like a lot of activities. So if someone, I personally enjoy physical activities, going outside, running, doing all these things. But if someone enjoys knitting,
Right.
maybe to,
Maybe do knitting. Right. No, I think
yeah,
that makes a lot of
yeah,
sense.
while knitting or while stuck in traffic or whatever it may be, or sitting on the couch. But yeah, just kind of think about what is going on in your own head, or how your body is, or if your knee hurts, or whatever's going on, and just kind of seeing where that goes for a beginner. You don't need any special equipment. There's not a lot to it, so I think it can be pretty approachable
Right.
in that sense. But
Right. Exactly. There isn't a lot to it. It isn't something that's super complicated. I mean, it's
yeah, I would
intimidating,
also
but not
recommend.
complicated.
It's for me, it's intimidating because it's not a quick fix.
Right.
If I'm,
Absolutely.
uh,
I found my brain doesn't
you
like
know,
things that the thinking rational, like overthinking mind
yeah,
doesn't like things that might shut it up. And so it doesn't like
hmm
meditation, doesn't like things like that. But it benefits
oh
it.
yeah,
It does benefit it.
yeah. You have to kind of volley between, the present, and I'm not saying never think about the future or present, but or past, but
You could, it's certainly,
make sure you're coming back to
I've
the
always found
moment.
it's healthy to reflect and then have long
Yeah.
term, have aspirations and things you want to accomplish. But the only thing that'll
Mhm.
accomplish future endeavors is the here and the now. Ultimately, you have to act in the
Mhm.
now. So it's not, you can't just keep thinking about the future and then have expect it to just show up. It's about what you're doing in this moment. So I think that's it.
Yeah, personally, I try to bike to work most
Mhm.
days, and, when I first started biking in the city, it was pretty scary in Boston.
Yeah, you're a trooper.
Drivers
I can
are
only imagine.
oh, man, drivers here, I can be one of them. Uh, we're not the most patient bunch,
No, definitely
and
not.
as a biker, it can be kinda hectic, and I'm biking on some city streets. Anyways, yeah, there were some days I was get to work or get home, and I was pretty, like, stressed, or I was like, a car comes near me, and I'm, like, yelling at it. Flipped a couple drivers off here and there.
Right,
Uh,
right. No, that happens. That happens.
just a couple. But I guess what I'm getting at is, I was very, like, reactive to all these things, or I'd hit a bump and kinda, like, grab the handlebars even tighter, and, worry that I'm gonna, I don't know,
No, yeah.
die, or get hit by a
Right,
car, or
right.
ruin my bike, or whatever it may be. Um, and again, not overnight, but it would just be, make biking even harder. And over time, and biking for the past 3 or 4 years now to work.
Hey, that's
Uh,
admirable.
it's not to say it prevents me from getting hit. I've still
Right,
got
right.
hit like a year ago,
But you can't sit
but
there worrying about it.
yeah, I try to quite literally and figuratively, like, uh, roll over the bumps and keep moving,
Mhm.
and not white knuckle the handlebar, but go along.
Right.
If a car cuts me off, instead of flipping him off, I just kind of, again, like we mentioned earlier, shift my perspective. I might laugh at him. I
Right,
might,
yeah.
under my breath, think he's an asshole, but not.
You don't need to necessarily
um,
let that trans into the next
yeah,
part of your day and go just keep the the quick emotion is
Yeah, acknowledge that it happened and try to keep moving. I mean,
right.
again, it's not about preventing things. You can still, you know,
I mean, yeah, because
get hit by a car,
right,
but
there's and
um,
sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. It just happens.
yeah,
But I think it's I found those quick emotional reactions, like or just like the quick emotions of a moment. Let's say someone comes close to hitting
yeah,
you, they're still gonna happen. Like it's you can't prevent emotion from
yeah.
no.
I mean, we're still, we're humans. We react. It's not about denying that, but um, we do have this big old brain of ours. So
It likes to fixate on things. It likes to it
yeah,
likes to
yeah.
overthink.
It likes solving problems. It's there to like, solve problems, and you gotta you can't just sit around and think all day, and but you can't just go out and mindlessly do. You gotta kind of
Exactly. But the brain likes to think. The brain thinks that
yeah, yeah.
everything can be solved by
Oh
thinking.
yeah,
But really, I'm not so sure about that one.
yeah. Going back to an earlier point, personally, I've struggled with kind of anxiety off and on in my life, and I get anxious for so long, I kind of lose it and kind of get depressed sometimes. And it's not something I share with a ton of people, but it's something I kind of roll with. And a few years ago, living in New England, I never grew up skiing, but kind of I think it was around when I was finishing undergrad or shortly after. Uh, my my wife took me, which was my wife then. We were in a long term dating stage, and she introduced me to skiing, and I got so hooked on skiing and for the fun of it, but it helped me like face some fears of just like steep hills and the intensity of a moment or dealing with ups or downs or bumps in the road or kind of embracing the intensity of the environment, but also kind of skiing slower and embracing like the slowness or stillness or fun of it or
Absolutely. I mean, that's a good metaphor for like life, I would say, honestly.
yeah. So yeah, skiing has definitely been for me an interest in. I didn't know it at the time why what got me into skiing or why I liked it. I just know I liked it. But the more I've skied over the years, kind of noticed it's because it's that like unintentional practice.
Right. Absolutely.
You know.
And if someone to ask myself the question that I asked you, if someone were to come up to me and ask, how do I get into like mindfulness? Let's start with like, awareness of, how you're feeling and what is going on in your head, but also like what are what are your callings? What are things that you love doing? What are things that like put you in that flow of being in the moment and the adrenaline? I'm sure you get like the adrenaline from skiing and there's a certain element to that that you can apply to life because going to these callings and things that we enjoy can help us deal with things in life, and that's part of mindfulness. It doesn't have to be sitting in the dark room meditating for 4 hours. It's
Yeah.
almost unrealistic. But I mean, I so by the time this podcast airs, this will have already happened. But I'm just recently, like as of like a couple days ago, got accepted to a 10-day silent meditation retreat, and it's happening.
Wait, like
It's in
so? How
November.
silent?
Oh, you're not allowed to you
That's like it's
you can't
deafening. It's
so how it works is it's
the silence would be so deafening.
it's Vipassana meditation, which it goes back like, hundreds of years, like to ancient India, but it's you you take a vow of silence for 10 days and there's other people there, but you're not even allowed to look at them. You're not allowed to have any subtle interactions. And it's 10 days of silence and meditation. And it's
Yeah.
intimidating, so I
Ooh.
wouldn't recommend.
All this talk about mindfulness, but yeah, I'm not at that level. I would be,
So it's definitely an
you know.
intimidating idea, but I'm doing it to further gain like an awareness and see what comes up. But like that's
Mhm.
intense. I wouldn't recommend that for somebody. Like it like right off the bat.
No, no, it would be interesting, and like a lot of this, the perfectionist side of me would again, like how I'm reacting right now. I'm like, oh, I couldn't do that, but it would be an interesting like practice and just kind of see where you fall with it
Right, just to kinda
and
just
not
that's kinda what I'm going in for it, like, there was as soon as I got
yeah, yeah.
accepted, I actually tried to come up with reasons to not do it, and it's like, I'm like, "Ah, you know what? It's happening during the week of Thanksgiving, actually." I'm like, "Oh, you know what? I won't be able to have Thanksgiving, but it's not like I'm going back to Massachusetts for Thanksgiving. I'd still be out here, like,
It's,
cooking my own turkey,
yeah, I guess
so it's not like I'm doing
I'm
anything."
curious, like, what do you do during the day? Or like what's
So
like
how the schedule works, there's like a pretty set you like wake up and like meditate and then you'll have like some tea and there's like different meditation practices throughout the day and also like
I mean, yeah, so you're
lectures.
still doing things, you're just
Yeah.
in
So yeah, you're not
silence?
just
Okay.
it's not like solitary
So you could still
confinement.
eat a yeah, you could still eat a Thanksgiving
No,
pie.
they have set meals. Well,
What?
it's like in a
Oh,
you go
can I smuggle one
like
to you? Do you want me to? I mean,
I mean
I'm not trying to ruin your thing
they would
here, but
probably not be happy about that, but it's like 10 days, you
okay.
go to a center, it's like out near Joshua Tree, but, like and it's supposed to be
Oh,
pretty
yeah. So
intense. By the time this airs, I'll have already done it, unless, my mind makes me back out, but I alrea
I'm tempted to ask what do you plan to get from it, but then
Right.
the ultimate yogi or someone
Well, no, but the thing is,
to
like,
just go in with an open mind and not
that's exactly how I'm trying to go in because I did think about that question, like, "What am I trying to gain from this?" But, like, I think it's more just about seeing what comes up during it and then reflecting and responding and being able to I mean sit with myself in silence for 10 days. Like that's it's a scary thought, but I mean so we'll definitely see and I am planning on doing a podcast episode like reflecting on it, but I mean who knows what will that will look like cuz I mean I haven't done it yet, so who knows.
yeah, it's funny where, people are, like, social
Oh yeah.
creatures and, but in America, one of the worst forms of punishment aside from the death penalty is, like, solitary confinement,
Oh yeah.
and it's, I don't think you'll have solitary confinement there, but it's interesting, your mind can kind of,
Yeah. I mean,
really get
absolutely.
carried away there.
I'm sure if you put like a Buddhist monk in solitary confinement, he'd be fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and just in terms of
Uh,
to a degree,
I wonder.
to
No,
a
yeah, I guess
degree,
I
like
wonder.
just in terms, because I think what it is it's the mind. It's just constantly going, and the mind needs that
Yeah.
stimulation. And in a sense, I don't think gets too much stimulation from just thinking. And I think that drives your, you look in solitary confinement, people like go insane in there.
Yeah, we need new information.
Exactly, exactly. Like we need that
Um,
constant like seeking, that gratification seeking of new information and we get that through community and other people. And I think humans are they're
mhm.
definitely meant to be communal creatures and live in, this in unison with each other. But so it is interesting to do a silent retreat. And what's interesting is you have other people there and you actually have a roommate, but you're not allowed to speak to them. You're not allowed to make any sort. You're not allowed
Interesting.
to have any sort of like. You're not allowed to make eye contact. No subtle gestures. It's it's really interesting, and it's all like donation based. So like it's you technically can just go and do it for free. Like it's anybody's welcome. But
Hmm.
yeah, it'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be funny. They try to like your roommate tries to like troll you or
Right.
like mess with you and you can't react. But yeah, no, but also yeah, it's sometimes curious. It's interesting exploring where your mind goes or just not always deep things, but just kind of like reflecting on
Right.
random things or not thinking at all. But
Well, and I think the
um
mind definitely does serve an important role. I mean, it's the problem solving brain. Like it's important for us to
mhm,
do reflection and be insightful and problem solve things, but just we get taught that that's the only way. So it if anything that kind of works against us and it kind of creates like for you the perfectionist model. Like I think that's instilled generated in our minds, and we seek that to satisfy our mind in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, I was just thinking it can be kinda intoxicating or, if you get carried away on social media or flipping through Netflix, things that I am a victim of.
Right, absolutely.
Uh,
I mean, I deleted Facebook for a reason. I couldn't. I mean, it's sometimes it's fun to sit with your popcorn and read through a Facebook
oh,
argument, but
yeah,
like,
well, no, yeah, it's got its place and, but,
my mind abused it. I
um
couldn't. I found myself mindlessly scrolling, mindlessly. That we use that word mindlessly, like scrolling. I say that all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, exactly,
So
exactly. Ah, it's so mindless work or
right, just
yeah.
mindless, tedious. Like it's like a time filler because I think a lot of that comes with the uncomfortableness of like I think solidarity can be a good thing, but a lot of people go to loneliness as opposed to solidarity when they're with themselves. So being
Mhm,
alone can be, I think it's necessary and an important thing, but it also, loneliness kicks in for a lot of people, which makes people scared of being just by themselves with their minds. So, things like mindless scrolling on your phone for 6 hours a day happens. I mean, I'm guilty of my screen time going up. you know, it was up
mhm.
last week, and I was like, oh, all right, I'll try and work on that for next week. But it's a constant reflection. That's when it's really healthy to do.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Yeah, let me know how that
Oh,
goes.
and
I'm
definitely
curious
will,
into that.
definitely will. It'll be so it actually ends Sunday, December 1st. And all of my
So
podcasts are getting released on December 2nd. So I'm gonna have to
interesting. So
everything will have to be like
what I'd be
completed.
curious about too is, are you allowed to write things down?
No, no, you're not. I actually
Ooh,
wanted
okay,
to.
that's like that's high level
I wanted to.
mindfulness or whatnot. Because yeah, for me personally, it's dealing with stresses or anxieties or depressions of life can writing has definitely helped to kind of get the thought out of my head or down on paper and let it go. So I'd be very curious. You really got to like
You gotta sit with
embrace that
yourself and
challenge.
and then
Yeah.
just yeah, that's because I was wondering if we could do writing because I myself have been very much into journaling, and I got
Hmm.
into the flow of that, and it's actually a very great mindfulness practice to learn my emotions, learn my thoughts, ideas. I mean, I go every day at least writing something down. I do my future self journaling every morning, but then I usually try and write a couple other things down throughout the day if it's just like a quote or, a topic idea that I really want to explore more. But so those 10 days not being able to write anything down will definitely be a challenge because I write something down
Yeah,
like
I
every
guess.
day.
Yeah, thinking about myself. I guess I'd be curious. Are you for like the 10 days without talking and without writing? Like, if I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, like
Mhm.
pretty active, it'd be one thing. But if I was like kind of in a more sedentary environment, it would be
Right,
different.
right. It's one yeah, if you're doing
Um,
the Appalachian Trail, that takes months and you could go for days without seeing people and you're just hiking and exploring. I mean, that would definitely be one thing, but you're right. This is just like you're in one place, you're sitting meditating and you're not doing anything else. You're just being in the moment, being there. And so it's definitely like a almost like a hardcore like meditation like session
Interesting.
thing.
Yeah,
So we will
yeah.
definitely see what the impact, how I reflect, how I see it after the fact. That'll be, I don't know. I'm excited for it, but I'm also like low key terrified. So we'll see.
You just take LSD the whole time,
Oh my
and
gosh, can you
that's a
imagine?
10 days. I feel like you'd lose your mind, actually. But
Honestly, though, I mean, I found that
so I'm told.
I, I found like, I mean, LSD makes the minds like, for me, I'm just so amazed by everything. So if I was doing that there, I mean, I've done meditation under the influence of psychedelics, and it was actually a very enlightening experience. But you have to really bring
Mhm.
yourself into that like intention, and I think it's So maybe if I did it, it would be the most enlightening thing I've ever done, but I think they would know and they'd probably throw me out. So it would
Yeah, yeah, no,
they'd be like,
don't do that.
or they'd say,
Don't
"Wow,
get
this
kicked
guy
out.
is really in the zone."
Yeah.
You never know. It should definitely be, I'm not gonna say fun, but it should be
Enlightening.
it'll be it'll be it'll be enlightening, and I'm going in with an open mind, so we'll see what comes up. We'll see what comes up. The mind, I'm sure there will be days like anything in life. I talked about having 4 out of 5 days this week I would classify as good. I'm sure at least a few of those days are going to suck. Like I'm gonna be, ready to
Mhm.
leave, and I'm wondering what I'm doing, like why I went, but I'm sure
And
there.
what's interesting is that, it's a safe environment. You'll have food, you'll have water, and like all the basic human needs, and you know, it, you should be in, on paper, you should be fine. Um, but yeah, your mind can definitely, if you don't take care of it, like if you don't take care of your body, but if you don't take care of your mind, it can play tricks on you. You can, it,
I
yeah,
mean
it can be a interesting,
I mean,
not
it's
interesting. That's a bad word for it, but like a,
well, it's definitely interesting. The mind is
yeah, interesting
fascinating.
when you take a step back. Um, but yeah, I've personally found myself like kind of ruminating sometimes, and like that is like thinking over and over about a certain topic, whether it's good, but and that's fine. But then there are times where I get caught up in kind of like a huh, uh, problem I can't solve or whatnot, and kind of get caught up in that and trying to figure it out, or if, whether it's a social situation or a financial situation, and you get caught up in this like worrying,
I mean, it's
and
easy to
it's
get
just
caught up in that, though. It's so easy. I've definitely have done the
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing all the time.
And yeah, it's kind of this downward spiral, and then it can affect, going back to mindlessness. It can affect like, I don't want to work out as much, but
Right.
um,
It kind of influences the rest of your actions in a sense, because
yeah,
when you're in your own head, you're not making the conscientious choices. Maybe yourself as a less, I don't want to say high strung, I suppose, but like when you're less wound up, you might not make the same choices. You might be more mindful of your
hmm,
actions. So it all ultimately plays down to the mind. The mind is
yeah.
scary.
To yeah, yeah. To quote that lecture the other day again, one of the notes I had taken is he had mentioned something about if you're in a mental funk, it can't be actually solved from conception thinking, and
Mm.
he mentioned needing mindfulness, or applying mindfulness, where it helps to focus on your body and get out of your own. Another, um, is it? Isn't there? I've never been in prison, fortunately, but don't prisoners have that phrase about like, do the time, don't let the time do you? So there's,
Right, exactly. Yeah,
um, you do have to keep activating your own body,
absolutely.
doing push-ups in silence, and
I mean, we'll see. I don't know if that's allowed. I don't know what is
what?
like push-ups and for my 10-day meditation or silence. I don't think I can do push-ups in silence. So I don't know if
Eh,
I'm allowed to work out at all.
yeah, I think you could. I don't
Sneak some crunches in on my bed.
know. Jumping jacks, yeah.
But I mean, we'll see about that one. We'll see what happens. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. The mind will do what the mind does, as always.
Yeah, it's one of the most powerful computers out there. Isn't Elon Musk is trying to have, is it that neural net? Like he's trying to have like
Yeah.
a
Yeah, they wanna create the like I mean, because the mind is more powerful than any computer that's ever been built, and I personally don't think, I mean, at least in our lifetimes, there will ever be a computer that surpasses human intelligence. But again, I'm also a big believer that once you have exponential growth, it grows quickly and quicker than you could ever imagine. So maybe Elon Musk was is already onto something and is going to create this sort of super. I mean, you already look at where AI is and, automation for other things, but just like a supercomputer that can go beyond what the mind can. I mean, it'll happen eventually. I just don't know when that will be.
And that, yeah, that'll be some dystopian future where we're all just mind drones. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple questions for you.
All right, I'm listening. I'm all ears.
I guess all this talk about mindfulness. Some people can kind of dismiss, in my personal experience, some people can kind of like dismiss it or maybe not understand it or just, it's all good in theory and it's a lot of like it sounds good and we talk about all these activities, but how do we apply it? I do live in the real world where I work a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever, and so how do you try to apply some of these techniques to the day-to-day grind of everyday life?
Right. I mean, I think it comes back to the awareness that we are all living in the same world of, life is a grind and it's about constant growth. It's about constant growth society teaches us in terms of material and consuming and monetarily. But I think it's ultimately also about ultimate growth, like inner growth inside of us. And I think
Mhm,
with mindfulness and when I'm for me, in everybody's mindfulness routine and what they do is going to be different. But by me, when I wake up early and when I, start the day meditating and doing a little bit of yoga and going to the gym, that's able to put me in a position where I can mindfully go through the day and be a little more, instead of reacting to things, kind of responding in a more mindful manner. So I think
mhm,
the that's what the goal of mindfulness is, not to necessarily become this enlightened guru, because even people you call enlightened gurus are their own people with their own anxieties and insecurities. They live life in a mindful manner, most definitely. But I
mhm.
think anyone who just wants to get into it and wants to start taking more control of their own lives, it just comes down to using willpower, because we do have incredible willpower. When it's applied, it's the strongest thing that any of us really have. So
So how sorry, you keep going, but,
no, no, no.
um, so how do you apply you're out in California, how do you apply mind to, like, what, LA or California traffic? That's
That's one of those things where it's bad, and the I-5, the 8-lane highway scares
Yeah,
me shitless. But it's one of those things where I consciously choose to not let it bother me. I mean, I could sit in the traffic and really ruminate on the fact that I'm sitting in traffic and it sucks that I'm not getting to where I want to get to fast enough, or maybe I'm running late, but ultimately there isn't anything I can actually do about it. And it takes a while to get to that point where you're not super upset about these things, but I just kind of sit back and be like, all right, I'm doing the best that I can to get to where I need to be if I'm sitting in traffic. And, as long as I'm doing my best, I ultimately can't necessarily control what's happening in the world around me. And so, sort of
mhm,
gaining that perspective and realizing that, I'm not this all powerful being that controls everything. So, we can control our own actions, we can control our own thoughts and how we're responding to things. And it's an example of I'm going to choose to respond to this particular, in this case, traffic. I'm going to choose to respond to traffic in a mindful manner as opposed to getting upset about it. Because if I get upset about it, then it's going to negatively impact, when I get to my destination. So
yeah,
it's all about, I think it does all come down to choice, but so much of the choices that we make are made unconsciously. So it's kind of gaining that conscious awareness that you're making unconscious choices to be upset about things like traffic and reacting to things. And ultimately, you do break in your, I mean, I don't, the day of the week, what was it? I think it was Tuesday. that it just sucked. Like, I didn't wake up early and go to the gym. I decided I was gonna sleep in, and I didn't go through
Hmm.
my mindfulness routine, and the whole day I was sort of just stuck in my own head. So there are certainly days that happens, but what you do is at the end of the day, you consciously reflect and just try to do better the next day. So it's one of those things that it's a never ending game you're playing, really.
Hmm.
At least that's what I've found. And I think gaining that awareness is what's most important.
Yeah, it's a. I know, like for me, I hate doing my laundry, and
Right.
that's one of those things that like it's so hard to be mindful while I'm doing laundry because like I've done laundry so often,
Right,
and
right.
I bike
It's
to work, I
tedious.
work out, I do a lot. Yeah, it's like tedious and yeah, it can be a challenge to like apply mindfulness to like stuff I don't like doing. I love skiing and running, so it's kind of easy. I'm kind of cheating. It's easy to be mindful then.
Right, right.
Uh, but yeah, it can be hard to you know s- embrace doing laundry or like some
I don't think
chores.
anyone embraces doing
No, yeah,
laundry.
yeah, but again, really your point, not loving. You don't have to love doing laundry, but
Right.
just acknowledging that, like, yeah, this sucks.
Yeah, and
But
acknowledging that it sucks is like the
yeah,
first step, you know?
yeah,
So, no, I think that's a good example because I'm the same way when I want to do laundry. I'm like, oh, I got to drag all this stuff all the way downstairs. But it's one of those things, we have to do it unless you want dirty clothes. But we have to do it. So it's just like, how are we going to respond and let it interact with the rest of our day? Is it going to affect the rest of our day? Only if we let it.
yeah. It's fun to practice mindfulness, through these activities, but it's definitely a challenge to like be mindful while I like cooking, but like meal prep on a Sunday, and we do it a lot of Sundays.
Right. Right.
It can be mindfulness on expert level.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, right now I'm working back in the spring. My wife hated me for working. I mean, she loved me, but like she was not pleased with my choice of working 4 jobs at a point. Eh, I got there are a couple side jobs for fun, ski instructor and whatnot, and working full time and whatnot. But I guess my point is, um, yeah, it can be a challenge uh, doing all those
No,
and staying like
absolutely.
fully attentive to it. So
I mean, it's one of those things. It's through through practice is how you get there. I mean, it's not something that happens overnight. I mean, it's the brain is like any I believe some people will debate this, but I the brain is like any other muscle in your body. So
oh
you
yeah, no, I mean, the science community would not debate that.
science. All right, then as long as I got the science
It's a
community
big
behind
muscle. It's
me,
just
it's like any other
it's like your
muscle in your
heart.
body. So if you're training it to be more mindful, you'll find yourself being more mindful in more situations. And the more you do it, the more you consciously try to practice it, you'll get better at it. It's one of those things. It doesn't happen overnight because if it did happen overnight, everybody would be enlightened and there would be no stress in the world. So there'd be no war. There would be nobody hungry.
To so to be fair, I just googled, is your brain actually a muscle? And I misspoke. It's not technically muscle, but
All
I think
right.
it does according to Google here. It has some muscle in it, so I stand corrected. Uh,
Okay. It's part of the whole
but yeah,
operating system.
you definitely need to like create new neurons or work on the ones you got there, and
Right. Right. Because if you just let I call your old self kind of take control and you're not actively trying to grow, then everything around you kind of comes stagnate. At least that's what I've found. So, you know, the inner growth and the inner mindfulness translates to the rest of your life. At least that's what I've been finding. If I hadn't been trying to be mindfulness in my actions, I doubt I would have made it out to California, for example. But
mhm,
just wanting, I guess that's a big example. Just one big example.
just one.
Yeah, one of many.
Yeah, there's many things I appreciate about certain religions, and like your point of kind of almost, I'm paraphrasing, but like to submit control to a situation,
Right.
Christianity, or I think Islam. It's like turning your life over to God, and I
Right.
think there's some overlap there. But I also think, I don't know, I don't want to say they're wrong, but I disagree with some
Right.
some other aspects, and
Right.
um,
Well, what I found about religion, and this is not getting off topic, but what I found about religion, I feel like
this is
all
a
of them.
broad stroke.
It's sort of a it is sort of a broad stroke, but I found that I feel like all of them are founded on the same. They're all founded on the same overlying principles of, you could relate to mindfulness of unity and oneness between all people, and being consciously aware of your actions and how you fit into the world, and allowing yourself to simply go with the flow in a sense. And I feel like almost every single, if we're talking like enlightened beings like Jesus, Mohammed, uh, just to name two of them, they founded their religions in a time of need where their societies weren't really doing that. And so and they gained this following of people who started doing that as well. But over time, we see it transform into the cult-like aspects that it sort of has become of. And you see religions with some exclusive, what's the right word? Exclusiveness, excluding people in a sense. But I don't think that's like the original foundations of it. Like, it almost, to me, it all preaches this unity among people, which is why I think a lot of people gravitate towards religion. It's sort of the fulfilling of that. But
Is it? Yeah, no, I'm just thinking, is it the kind of a tangent, but is it the
that was kind of
Rastas
a
that think
tangent.
that? Sorry.
Oops.
No, is it the? I forget if it's Rastas or what religion. Um, talks about heaven isn't some other place out there, but like you kind of create your own heaven or hell here. It's kind of touching on that topic of like it's how you respond to your own world here. You can have
Right.
everything in the
Exactly.
world as far as possessions, and kind of also be the poorest man in the world at the same time.
Right. Exactly. It's all about your responsive, how you're responding, and I think that's sort of what I was getting at. That's what religion is all about, and they're all founded around that same principle. And I think we
Yeah,
can mindfully choose to do that. Something I found a
yeah.
lot
I
with
mean,
Buddhism in particular. I studied a lot. I've been studying a lot of Buddhism. I think it's more of a philosophy, but
mhm. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you had $10 million, gladly take it and put it to good
oh,
use and have
absolutely,
fun with it.
absolutely,
But uh, I would mindfully spend that 10 million.
right, absolutely. I mean, I was doing tutoring the other day, and we ran out of work to do, and the kid went on this website of, how would you spend Jeff Bezos' money? And like
Oh man,
you have like 100 something
pre or
billion.
post divorce, that's a lot of money.
Right? And it was like 100 something $1 billion, and like you can choose all
Whew.
these actions to do. And it was actually really making me think. It's like, what would I be able to do with $100 billion? And you could, I think it's the World Bank estimates you could like end poverty with like $60 billion. I think that's what it is. So I mean, it's just crazy, like how with an amount of money you could certainly do. I think I'm going off on another tangent,
Whatever.
but with that amount of money, like how you could choose to mindfully live, but ultimately money doesn't necessarily matter in terms of fulfillment and the life you're living. So yeah, I'm starting to go off on a lot of tangents. I
No,
just got
no,
all
no.
these tangents in
Uh,
my brain, like,
They're all
whoa,
connected. I was
yeah.
trying to I was following your thought process there,
Yeah,
but
you can kinda see where that came
um,
from, like, where that came from.
I mean, it's your fifth dimension podcast. You call the shots on if tangents are allowed or not. So
Tangents are always allowed. I like to hear the rambling thoughts, although even if I'm the one speaking them, they're just coming, they flow.
yeah, flowing barefoot on the Charles on your longboard. Yeah.
Yeah, you know it, you know it. I miss doing that,
Um,
although it'd be a little cold if I went to do it now, but
yeah, it was chilly today, but
oh, it was 100
um,
degrees today. I had 100-degree weather, off topic, but
yeah, to bring it back on topic here, I think we're just trying to understand what we're doing here, as far not just this podcast, but people, we as in people.
right.
Uh,
No, I definitely agree with you. It's trying to gain a meaning to life in a sense through mindfulness of our actions and how we respond to the world. I think that's ultimately what life is all about. I don't think there is even a need to a lot of people search for meaning, but I think the meaning is already within everybody. Like there is the meaning is to simply be and do and live. There is beyond that and help others when you can. That's what I found my meaning is. So,
can I play devil's advocate and
yes,
say like,
absolutely.
is this like a spoiled white male's privilege that you're talking about, or like
Oh,
how?
well, that's actually a good point. That's a good point. So, for me, I am
How, yeah,
absolutely
how do you apply this topic to? Again, I'm playing devil's advocate, reaching,
no, I
but
think that's a
there's
really good point.
there's so many harsh realities of
I
the
think
world we live in. I mean, there's so many great things, but there's just
no,
a lot
I'm
going on.
for me, like just for both of us, the position to spend a Friday night talking about concepts like this is an immense like privilege. Like there's so many worse off places in the world that we could be that are just, poverty stricken or, people don't have access to clean water. But I think ultimately a goal of this podcast for me too is to sort of gain an awareness on just how lucky we are as people and also a big part of life to be and to live. A big part of that for me, like I was saying, is helping others. So kind of raising our own awareness consciousness to a point where all right, we really are able to help ourselves and with our own mindful actions. So now how can I go and help others? And I think that's a big there's a big need for that. A lot of the ancient one of the ancient Buddhist philosophers, I don't remember who it was, he said the best thing that you can do for me is to help yourself, and the best thing I can do for you is to help myself. So, working on ourselves and working on what we need to work on to help others is how we create a better world with less things like poverty and hunger. So, for me to be able to sit and do this podcast, it's trying to play into the larger role helping others and gaining a larger scale of awareness, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, no, good answer. Yeah, it can be a challenge to, for sure to apply some of these topics to like, uh, whether it's the mundaneness of everyday life or some huge topics that are,
Right,
you know,
absolutely.
going around the world. And
And like people who might be in less fortunate situations than like let's say you or I, they're not going to necessarily get to even explore topics like this because they're more worried about, you know, finding food, finding water, having a place to live. When you're in those type of situations, it's sort of, you look at like hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
yeah, yeah,
If your
yeah.
like
We had a
physiological needs aren't met, you're not going to get to be able to reach the top of the hierarchy in terms of self actualization. I think that might be the top one, and getting to help others. So if you have the needs and on that scale and you're able to reach a point of self actualization, I think it's almost like a duty to be mindful of that and try and help others if you can. So at least that's what I found through my own personal um, experience going through the world mindfully or trying to.
yeah. I was thinking back to fourth time now or fifth time I brought up that lecture the other day. Another note I had written down. Remember Charlie Brown?
Oh yeah, I love Charlie Brown.
there's some comic he quoted about Charlie Brown kind of moping, depressed,
Hmm.
saying like someday we're all going to die, and then the next comic like Snoopy's like yes, but every other day we're going to be alive.
Oh, that's
And
I like that.
yeah, it was a simple but effective
Absolutely. I mean, we have this, you
comment
know,
about yeah, just trying to
absolutely. I really
make
like that a
something
lot.
of it's yeah, make something of the time we have.
I mean, right, because it is limited. We do all die eventually. Human beings are all fragile beings that eventually die. That's what we all have in common. So it's a you can look at it as
Yeah,
a you can look at it as a morbid cycle, I suppose. But there's so much time to be alive and do great things and live how you want to. And ultimately, there's no way to know if there is if if this is our only life. We have to view it as this is the only time we got. So, you know, being mindful of
yeah,
that is important.
yeah, mindful, not erratic, and don't go crazy.
Exactly.
Doesn't give you the right to rob a bank or do something crazy,
Right,
but at the same
exactly.
time, yeah, yeah, making them. But yeah, it's from studied undergrad in biology. They talk about the circle of life, where you need, unfortunately, you do need death for life, and
Mhm.
going back to your topic on mushrooms, we need mushrooms to break down the dead matter and
Right,
continue that
exactly.
cycle.
It's all interconnected. It's all this big one life cycle.
Yes.
It's all flowing on this earth.
So yeah, the Lion King, circle of life, right?
Circle of life. And I mean, it's in that circle. If you can be mindful of it, you'll live a good life. You'll make the best of it. I mean, it's all the ultimate. Like I was reading about this the other day, and like in Buddhism, it's the ultimate yin and yang, right?
hmm
Every action has a reaction. So
Yeah, I
the
mean
ultimate
it's
action of life is going to create the ultimate action of death, the ultimate karmic experience, really. So it's just one huge reaction, one huge. I don't know. It's crazy to think about it in that sense.
yeah.
Now we're getting into some deep Eastern
No, it's
philosophical.
this is the fifth dimension,
This
right?
is the fifth dimension, the deep. We're going into the deep terrains, which is good. The deep terrains of the human experience.
Yeah, the good, the bad, the ugly, I guess the phrase.
The good, the
And then
bad, the ugly,
there's so
and
much more. Yeah, there's so much more to it as well. Not just those.
everything. That's the everything in between.
Yeah. Um yeah, actually, who is it? My dad got me a book, The Book of Awakening,
Oh,
by
interesting.
Mark Nepo, Nepo.
Oh, the
And
book of
it's
awakening.
essentially, yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I've only looked at a few pages so far, but um the subtitle on it is "Having the life you want by being present to the life you have."
I like
And
that.
yeah, essentially reading the back of the book here. Um, Mark Nepo is a poet, a teacher, and he provides these like small daily, what is it, I'm paraphrasing, but small daily doses of inspiration, words of wisdom. Um, and where I'm going with this, the other day, where was it? I have the book here. I was trying to find it. But he referenced driving south on what's that? What's the main north-south highway in California?
95?
I don't know.
I
Pick a
95?
number. Sure,
Wait. All right, yeah.
whatever it is. And but he talks about kind of what do you describe it as? Like living life in between. In between,
Yeah.
as he drove down in between. Yeah, yeah. Here it is. The road in between. As he drove down, uh, coast in California, you have the mountains on one side, and you have like the ocean on the other
Oh,
side.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
is a symbol for uh, sometimes you have to stand up in life,
Mhm.
but other times, he uses kind of the at least ocean as like a sometimes we're kind of defeated and leveled out.
Right.
Um, but we're meant to kind of live in between the two. You can't have the highs all the lows. It's just
Right.
interesting. Um,
No, it's absolutely true. I like that. I'm gonna definitely check out that book. I take at least one trip up to Barnes& and Noble a week, so it's I've got books and books on books just stacked
Yeah,
up.
this is very interesting because some little excerpts here, anywhere from half a page to a page or two, and then he's got like some tips on
Mhm.
sit quietly, breathe deeply, center yourself, and kind of like think about this, blah blah blah. There's
Oh,
some good stuff to it,
that's
but yeah, again, tying it back in as far as it's not just the good, the bad, the ugly. We're kind of meant to live in the in between.